You can now stream the forbidden documentary Occult Louisiana free on Tubi TV. Hello friends, we are in a troubling time when it comes to misinformation. The views of our guests do not reflect that of my own. This show is for entertainment purposes only, and any information presented during this show is a live-action role-play scenario. All that being said, enjoy this episode. Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Ryan Burns. First, be sure to check out our website, forbiddenknowledge.news. That is where you also find the Forbidden Knowledge Network, which includes over a dozen incredible podcasts with some of your favorite content creators. That's forbiddenknowledge.news. Today I want to welcome back to the show Ryan Burns. He began researching the Utah Basin and the mysterious skinwalkers in the area many years ago. He now owns property overlooking Skinwalker Ranch. He hosts the popular podcast Hero Paranormal and has written about his experiences investigating shapeshifters, UFOs, and precognitive intelligences. Ryan, welcome back. How you doing?
Doing good. How are you, Chris?
I am excellent, man. It is great to have you. Happy solstice, and thank you again for coming on such short notice. That is greatly appreciated. I really am excited to get your thoughts on the drone and orb sightings all over the United States. I believe there's even been some in the UK, other countries as well. And when you look at all the videos surfacing of the drones themselves, they appear to be pretty standard-looking human-made technology. But I've also seen the recent videos of shape-shifting orbs and the drones seemingly attempting to interact or maybe intercept these things and then all of a sudden being decommissioned, deactivated, and falling to the ground. It's very interesting. The official narratives are sketchy at best, and the theories are all over the place. So I'm really looking forward to getting your thoughts into this. Before we do, just remind the audience a little bit about yourself and where they can find you.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it. This is a marvelous time to be alive. This is something that, we went through that kind of Satelloon flap. Yeah. Which I thought was insane. And the Chinese spy balloon, I thought that was too good to be true. And now we have this, which makes that seem like a drop in the bucket. My name's Ryan Burns. I am someone that's mesmerized by all these mysteries. I have a little science project in the Uinta Basin of Utah called spacewolfresearch.com. And I host a small podcast, heroparanormal.com. You can also find that on YouTube. But yeah, let's just jump right into it. Let's get into this business.
Yeah, man. Well, what are your thoughts on the overall situation? Like you said, we've had highs and lows of UFO sightings and quote-unquote disclosure, congressional hearings, and it would come and go, and we'd have these periods of time with nothing but there was never anything quite like this. This seems to be more widespread. These objects are very blatantly flying around in our skies. The government, military claims to not know or is giving sketchy explanations at best, like I said earlier. So it's super interesting, man. What are your thoughts on everything?
I think there's a lot going on. And as usual, I wish it was simple. I wish it was something very straightforward where it was like, it's this, let's move on. Everybody can go home. Have a nice day. But I think that oftentimes these things are more convoluted because there are different players involved. And at the moment, I think it's multi-pronged. In other words, I don't think it's just one particular thing. A lot of people are chiming in and saying it's extraterrestrials, or it's just the military, or it's just private drones, or it's Elon Musk's brother, or, a lot of speculations. And although I think those are all valid points and they are part of a multi-pronged situation. And what I mean by that is we're not hearing any pushback from the United States government because they're okay with people running with the ball, over into the side of the field to avoid any widespread panic. In fact, I believe that the US government tolerates the alien invasion narrative because it's far less destabilizing than the reality that they're involved in a potential nuclear or dirty bomb event. And that's not to take away from the alien narrative in any way, because these so-called aerial craft, in my opinion, are something that, even if they do fall within that alien narrative, they're going to have at least a nuclear signature or a biological or chemical signature, something that can be detected using some pretty high-end exotic technology. But I think we have assets, at least according to some of my sources in intelligence, that are exotic in nature. I'll just go that far, and they're specialized assets designed for reconnaissance and threat interdiction. So, in other words, they're there to sniff out any threats against this government, this country, and there is a political narrative. I believe that there is a very much non-human intelligence involved as well, and a few other things. So I don't know what angle to attack this from.
Wow. Well, let's kind of break down a few of the things that you said, starting with some of the official narratives that I've heard. First, it was Iran, an Iranian mothership, and then we have the radiation detecting drones, like you said, dirty bomb or some kind of nuclear detection, which would be a pretty simple explanation for all of this, but there seems to be many layers, like you said. So let's start with the mainstream explanations and what you've heard through intelligence, at least what you can tell us.
Yeah. And I'm not against that narrative that there is a political aspect to this. In other words, that there are countries, like you mentioned, Iran, and others, 9 come to mind, but that would not be so butthurt if something happened to us. And a really good example of that is, just recently, a Russian general in charge of the nuclear program just got blown away, coming out of a building with his assistant. And if that happened here, that would be considered an act of terrorism. So that's not inaccurate. And these initial leaks are not wrong. The congressman came out, and he's not entirely wrong. He got a lot of flack, but I think the guy went out on a limb, and that was a bad idea politically. But yeah, man, I think that there is a covert segment of the U.S. intelligence that has flagged credible implications or indications of an impending large-scale attack. At least the threat is there. And it's something described as dynamic, highly fluid, and elusive. The way it was put to me is it's like hunting a mouse in a pitch-black football stadium. You can imagine how hard that would be. And if you had hunting dogs, or AKA sniffing drones, how you would go about finding that highly fluid and elusive threat. So there's that going on. So wherever you see these reports surface of these drones or their anomalous counterparts, I believe that there is a potential threat operating in the vicinity.
The majority of these drone sightings started in New Jersey. Do you have any information about that particular location, why that was the first really saturated area?
For sure. Okay, so we have a few big things coming up. Okay, we have New Year's coming up, and New Jersey is not that far, just across the river from New York and Manhattan, obviously Times Square, where New Year's takes place. And there are locations in this country. I don't have the list in front of me. I think Washington is number one, then Virginia, then New York, Las Vegas, and LA. And I'm currently in Vegas, and just in the news this week in Vegas, they came out and said that there will be helicopters deliberately searching for radiation signatures along the Las Vegas Strip prior to New Year's. I'll send you the article if I can grab it here. I think it was Vegas 7, Channel 7, but or 8, I could be wrong. But anyway, the bottom line is the same thing is transpiring. We have the same policy and same U.S. airspace operations taking place in New York. It's obviously more populated. And I believe that there is a destabilizing threat near New York. And yes, it's just over the river in New Jersey. They have intel telling them this. And they have a strategy aimed at finding whatever this threat is, removing it, and we'll probably stop seeing the drones. But yeah, it's interesting.
The drones have also been sighted across the United States. Do you think this is a nationwide operation that they're doing?
Well, really good point, man, because it started in New Jersey. Now, these things have been seen before, and this stems back from. So, to answer your question, yes, broadly, this has been seen before. We've had this happen before in other places, and there is really good intel that there are, for lack of a better word, dirty bomb threats. After the Cold War, basically some nukes went missing, and you know, out of the Eastern Bloc. And we know this. Our intelligence sources know this, and they know that if we don't have them, there's a really good possibility that politically, BRICS nations may be. Now, I'm not pointing fingers at any particular one because there's a bunch that are involved with BRICS, but that there's the potential for the more threatening nations in the BRICS political atmosphere to possibly have that technology.
Let's shift over to some of the more anomalous things that have been seen, witnessed, videoed, associated with the drone sightings. I'm not sure how many of these you've seen of these orbs, these shape-shifting orbs that have been seen in the same vicinity as some of the drones, and the one going around circulating right now very virally is the one that seems to come into contact with one of the orbs and fall to the ground. Have you seen these?
It's so cool. Yeah, and that's exactly how these things would operate. So, whenever, okay, well, you know what? I am not going to speculate. I'm just going to tell you what my primary sources told me. The way he described the scenario is that there are multiple things. It's multi-pronged. There's various things going on. And yeah, it very much appears as if a drone is taken out by something that's more exotic, anomalous, more orb-like. And the drone comes in, for those who haven't seen it, very threateningly at high speed towards this orb. And the orb just kind of, you know, stands its ground. And long story short, finally, the orb and the drone connect, and the drone just falls to the ground. And we have to remember that these drones are specialized assets designed for reconnaissance and threat interdiction. They see something, and a lot of these are really highly exotic technologies involved, like AI. They have software systems that have speculative parts about them. In other words, they have something called situational awareness, where, for lack of a better word, these things act almost biologically. They're almost alive. You don't need somebody on the sticks telling this drone what to do. If it runs into something, it's programmed, whether however it reacts to whatever the threat is, it's programmed to act a certain way. And so these are really high tech devices, but again, they can't compare to the anomalous things we're seeing.
Well, thoughts on the anomalous orbs? I know you've had up close and personal experience with phenomena like this. Couldn't tell you if it's the same thing, although they have similar attributes with some of the videos I've seen in the past. But what do you think these things are? Do you think this is some sort of non-human intelligence?
100%. And again, I started to I was going to tell you what my source told me, and then I backed away, but I'll just say it. Okay, so when I asked the nature of the beast, I had a bunch of questions. How can we protect ourselves if it comes over our city? Because he couldn't really answer a lot of my questions. So I just got down to the bare bones. How do we protect ourselves? What's the worst case scenario? And what I was told is, worst case scenario, we have a cosmic Game of Thrones. He said, if this amplifies and continues, that eventually we will have basically more of these anomalous aspects involved, and it will become a cosmic Game of Thrones, as he put it. And as far as protection, he said if anything goes down, basically fire up the walkie-talkie. If you have plastic bags or plastic sheeting, put them over your windows, tape them with duct tape or packing tape, and especially get the vents first. Get the vents in your house first, windows next, and just hang out for 72 hours. I think we don't know what the threat is, but 48 hours, you can probably come out if it's an emergency, but ideally you want to stay inside for 10 days. And that's because we don't know what it is, whether it's chemical, biological, or nuclear. And even if it's none of those things, it's still a really good idea to stay inside if the grid goes down, because everybody's going to go totally apeshit. So that was what was told to me. So as far as the anomalous aspect, I very much got at least the feeling off of this individual, who is in a huge advanced working group. He's over at least 300 other intelligence officers. And he basically said, yeah, there's part of it that's just cosmic is what the word he used.
All right, so there's a few things you said I want to pull apart a little bit, as much as you can say. Again, as far as worst case scenario goes, you mentioned a few possibilities. Is there anything that really sticks out for you as more possible than any of the others?
Yeah. And, they're lesser threats. Some of these technologies, whether they're ours or not, have been known to have nuclear signatures regardless, potentially because of their exotic propulsion systems. So these aren't all just super badassery lithium ion, 18-hour batteries, which are dangerous in and of themselves if they come down. But we're talking about the potential for an actual reactor on board, which, although from what I understand are super highly insulated and protected, there's always the potentiality for a crack or a hairline crack or something to escape out of that. And then we have obviously the potential for a dirty bomb, a chemical warfare situation, biological, or something along those lines. But I think that's why we've seen so many security measures taken, in as much as, hey, if you see a drone go down, don't approach it. Don't shoot at the drones. Don't get near the drones. And it's not just to civilians, it's also to fire departments and law enforcement. They're supposed to call in the big guns. And from what I understand, even NEST is on site, which is the Nuclear Emergency Support Team. So they're there to basically, if this transpires, be involved. At least that's the allegation. And then we have something extremely anomalous taking place in that the FBI agents that have gone out, one in particular, which was an FBI profiler, I got information that so these guys went out. This is obviously something that they were interested in. Some of them go back home and they had something very similar to what we encounter in the Uinta Basin of Utah, which is sort of a hitchhiker effect where they go home and then they realize that this anomalous activity is over their homes, that they're seeing these similar orbs or drones over their homes. So there is an anomalous aspect that is not, at least as it appears, not human.
Now let's address some of the more out there conspiracies that we've been hearing. First of all, the fake alien invasion, some sort of psychological operation. Although the explanation is usually more simple than a lot of conspiracy theorists would like to have you believe, these are some of the things that are circulating out there right now and may be causing unnecessary fear, unnecessary panic. Although I have to think of the dystopian movies of the future where they have drones policing everything, and at any given notice, if you quote-unquote commit a crime, they can take you out. So that just makes me nervous that in our very near future, we may be seeing widespread sky drones policing everything. I mean, that is a possibility. But as far as the alien invasion, Project Bluebeam, some of these other theories that include psychological operations, what do you think about that?
Not far off, man. Of course, I don't want to get derailed, but we know that there is the theory, at least in conspiracy circles, when it comes to the occult and secret societies, ancient mystery schools, etc., of an all-seeing eye that's involved with the New World Order. And this is something that is always watching, right? To various degrees, there's somebody always keeping an eye on you. And from what I understand, that's a very good potential. In fact, already happening in some more dystopian countries on the planet right now. We still have some of our freedoms here, but don't think for a minute that you're not being watched, at least 10x of what you think. So if you know, it's not just the traffic lights.
Well, we're just one major psychological operation, pandemic, UFO invasion away from being locked down and having all the rights taken away under the guise of national security. So it's like you said, it's very possible, man.
100%. There's so much technology out there. Oh my gosh, man. It is unbelievable. One of the more wild ones is what is known as, it has a variety of different names. They call it a stingray traditionally, but it has different names now. A lot of places you would never expect to have these have basically it's listening technology that listens for cellular phones, can tap into your cellular phone, and it's much like Project Pegasus that came out of the intelligence community in Israel and Mossad, that is able to basically just listen to you through your phone, even if your phone's off.
Yes.
So this is the stuff we know about. And there is stuff that's even, that makes this older technology like the Stingray seem archaic. So yeah, they're watching. They're just watching.
All right, it's time to get deep into the woo-woo waters. You mentioned your source said something along the lines of a Game of Thrones-like scenario cosmically. This makes me extremely nervous because I've seen Game of Thrones and there are no quote-unquote good guys in that particular story. So that makes me think if we're facing something like that, none of the players have human interest in mind. Maybe elaborate a little on your thoughts. Is there only a dark side of this? With the New Age and spiritual community, you always hear that we're going to be saved by the light beings and the Palladians that are going to disable all the nuclear weapons and give us free energy technology. And then you have the other side where they're all evil and demonic and they're ready to enslave the planet. maybe it's somewhere in between. I don't know. What do you think?
Yes, in my opinion, we have the Kumbaya, do your CE5, they're all just our space brothers. And then you have the others that they're all reptilians eating human babies. Very much, in my opinion, I'm kind of a positive guy. I would prefer to go down
Right.
I want to sing Kumbaya around the campfire. But, and there's a lot of people that are on that page. And there is, that aspect, 100%. However, many of those individuals have not had the opportunity to see the malevolent side of what can only be called non-human intelligence. And I have seen it firsthand, and so have a bunch of others. And when you see that malevolent side, you're a lot more weary of interaction, unless it's just all love and rainbows and unicorns. And that is why the intelligence community, in my opinion, is very reserved and very guarded on this topic.
I wanted to go deeper into the malevolence aspect. You've said you've interacted with intelligences that may not have humanity's interest in mind. Well, certain people who are in the love and light space will tell you it's all based on your perception. It's all based on what you're putting out there. Well, I don't know if many people have gone near your property or Skinwalker Ranch with that mentality that they're just going to put out positive energy and it's going to be love and light and the entities are going to be loving. Have you ever had someone like that come out and just be proven flat wrong?
Many times. Many times. And I don't disagree with that approach. Right. It's a really good idea to reach out to your creator, your higher power, whatever you consider in line with your philosophies on a theological basis, and kind of extend that olive branch before going into the space. I think that's very important, and you want to do that. However, yes, there are verified and documented cases of people coming out. Boom, I'm just going to meditate out here, and next thing you know, they're being threatened, attacked, approached by something very malevolent. And in a way, I think that without wanting to, they sort of baited their own hook and threw it into the pond, because you have to be a little guarded, as with anything. And whenever it comes to sorcery, magic, the alchemical processes, I mean, this is why the Enochian language and why it's created, right? Why people like John Dee, Edward Kelly, etc., have these policies and these directions and instructions. Is you don't just go out there and do this. You create like a little bit of a protective circle around you first. You don't just jump into the fire. It's better to go out in a raft, because you don't know what you're inviting in. You could invite something in that very much, does not care about you in the slightest. And while I believe most of these entities, some of them are just out to have a good time. I mean, there's trickster entities. There's some that have a crazy sense of humor. Others just want interaction. Probably, a good 70-80% of them are in the quote unquote gray area. But, there's the other 10% at either extreme that, it can either be extremely beneficial to you or could be very damaging to you.
Let's talk a little bit more about the Orbs. I know you're familiar with Chris Bledsoe and his story and encounters. The majority of his encounters are very benevolent, seemingly beneficial encounters. I've not heard too many stories of orb encounters where there seemed to be a malevolent approach or something negative coming from it. Is that your experience as well?
For the most part, and color has a lot to do with this. And yeah, I'm good friends with Ryan Bledsoe. I believe their family does have connection to more of these, positive entities. And there is that doesn't mean that these are all saints up in the sky. Let's not forget the Prince of Air. And so even though I'm very close friends with him, and I believe 100% that they're interacting with things that are very benevolent, there are malevolent entities, in my opinion, and the stuff I've interacted with and the stuff I've seen. Now, I've interacted with things that were absolutely mind-blowingly benevolent as well. Uh, so I don't want to take away from that aspect. But again, that's why there's protocols involved, and why, in my opinion, when it comes to our government specifically, they're very aware of this stuff. In fact, Ryan Bledsoe has said, they've told us that these other entities exist, like the reptilian human baby eating aspect, and we just don't want to believe it. So this is something that many in the intelligence community that are in the know, it's better to just not deal with this topic. But when in closed circles, it's kind of a head wink and a nod, like, yeah, these things exist. It would be like that idea of going into a sports arena and it's got 60,000 people in it. The lights go off and someone approaches you. Are they good or are they bad? You just don't know. And that's a similar scenario.
In Dr. Joseph Farrell's most recent book, he discusses the possibility of plasma, intelligent plasmas that can be either positive or negative, and these can manifest from anywhere. They can be unseen sources of energy. They can communicate different ways and manifest different ways. Any information or intelligence that would point to that these are some sort of plasmas?
I think so. And, people that think that's a woo-woo idea, I say just look at ourselves. We are a plasma intelligence. We are something that, our brain, our computational system interacts with electrical impulses, and we have this fluid, for lack of a better word, that they actually call plasma running through our bodies. And if that's not woo woo, I don't know what is. I mean, we are a crazy example of something being able to survive a very long time in a very delicate meat suit, and we're really good at it. And yeah, so why not believe that these other intelligences? I love Joseph P. Farrell's work, by the way, that these exist. I believe they exist. And, they're traditionally has been so much literature, documentation of these non-human intelligences interacting with humanity. If you go back to the Greeks, they would have these quote unquote gods, for lack of a better word, up on Mount Olympus. And they would often report, that these gods would pick sides and kind of put these humans like a game of chess against one another. That this is, the just the nature of the beast. And I don't think that they were exactly far off. We're talking about the tip of the spear as far as intelligence and humanity back then. The Romans believed the same. The Egyptians believed the same. I mean, as far back as you go, it was historically, although these wars were very bloody, these different factions 100% believed that it wasn't just them going to war. It was them and their gods going to war against the other faction and their gods. So it was more about wanting to win for their cosmic intelligence or their counterpart than, them. They could care less about themselves, really, when they interacted with some of these cosmic non-human intelligences. And I think the same is true now. And let's not go too far back. Even during the Nazi ordeal, we had Foo Fighters in the sky, and those very much, in my opinion, and those that I've talked with others about, may have been these intelligences that were connected to some of the more occult aspects of that party or the Reich. They believed in something called the Vril. And these were, for lack of a better word, kind of those darker, malevolent entities.
Right. And this brings us to the shape shifting aspect of some of these intelligences that may be plasma. It could also be very much connected to UFO sightings throughout history. The phenomena seems to change and shift depending on where we're at collectively, especially technologically. The phenomena can appear to be a plane. You know, it went from the saucers and airships. Now we see the plasmoids, but I've seen the shape-shifting ones. And again, it's hard to discern what you're seeing on video online these days, but there are certain videos that you can have a pretty good sense that it's genuine. And I've seen these shape-shifting plasma-looking entities in the sky. You've even had situations where these things appear to be a plane at first and then turn into something completely different.
Yeah, they are able, you know, gods with, again, back to I mean, it's not even about I'm just one person and and you're just one person. And even if we accumulate a mind-boggling amount of experiences, which we have, but if we, that is nothing in comparison with the history of humanity, which has documented this basically time immemorial. And we have these intelligent aspects of the cosmos which are not human. For lack of a better word, they are intelligences, and they've been called everything under the sun, you know. But gods with a small g is what I would like to call them. And shape shifting kind of seems to be one of the key indicators that you're dealing with something that's, got some juice in the tank, some fire in the belly. And, as an example, a Nobel Peace, or I'm sorry, a Nobel Prize winning AI godfather, a gentleman named Jeffrey Hinton, said that even if we don't have World War III, we don't have nuclear disaster, we don't run out of food, if everything just goes perfect with humanity as we're going, that what we consider artificial intelligence eventually will decide it does not want us here. And that blows my mind because here we're talking about a Nobel Prize winner, a very intelligent person, considered a godfather in the space. And it reminds me that there is a saying out there that no intelligence is artificial. You can create an alchemical platform to allow intelligence in. And maybe that's what we're doing with all this software and programming. And we're creating an alchemical platform which kind of allows this intelligence in. But at some point, no intelligence is artificial. You're letting something in that can think for itself.
This also leads us to the physical, non-physical aspect of non-humans in general. Earlier you mentioned that one of your sources claims that there are indeed physical extraterrestrial beings, reptilians, lizard people. I just reached a point where my understanding is that it's more probable that we're dealing with some sort of maybe non-corporeal plasmoid intelligences, but then they have those folks that swear that they've had interactions with flesh and blood seeming beings that are very physical, being taken and having very physical things done to them. This just throws a whole new wrench into everything, and I'd love to get your thoughts. Do you believe there are these physical beings as well?
This is a tough one.
Yeah.
Okay. So the source you're talking about, his name is Tim Taylor, and he is among the crew of intelligence individuals that were communicating with the Bledsoes. Among them, there's CIA. It's an advanced working group of individuals, but this particular individual was basically telling the Bledsoes, he's in the book American Cosmic, and they use the name Tyler
Right.
Durden, like from Fight Club. in what I know, the Tim Taylor that I know is the very real deal. This is the guy where the rubber meets the road. He's not out for TV shows. He's not out for any of this nonsense. He's an example of someone who has interacted and communicated with non-human intelligence and knows how it
For those that
works.
may not be
And
familiar, could you tell us just a little bit more about
yeah,
who Tim Taylor is?
yeah, really good point. Okay, Tim Taylor is a NASA scientist. You know, like he's got a great book out there called Launch Fever that everybody should read. But he is a good old boy from the South. His book outlines how he kind of like by nook or crook, he just happened to be able to just get good enough to get involved with NASA. He was very lucky, rose to the top very quickly. And what it doesn't go into is the stuff that they talk about in American Cosmic, things that are more along the lines of the real deals, in my opinion, the guys that really know what's going on. They're usually called some pretty gnarly things, but among those, they're kind of grouped into what's called the invisible college. So, in other words, they'll talk about things in a very vague and general way. They kind of speak in parables, but they understand each other when they talk to each other because they have to talk that way given the positions that they're in and the people. They could be in a room, for example. It's kind of like you and I could talk in a room of normies and they wouldn't know what we were talking about. You know, we have that shop talk, and it's the same thing with the invisible college. So, people in this group have alluded to the fact, and many of them are in government and in intelligence positions, that there are malevolent entities, and that on some level, and these are the key aspects, on some level, these things are archonically feeding off of us in some way, shape, or form, and that they view us as containers. Now, whether that's containers for a food source, or if that's containers to put things in, or if that's containers for souls, we've heard this container comparison for a long time, all the way back to Bob Lazar. He is on the record talking about humans being viewed by these non-human intelligences as containers. So whatever that's worth.
Going back a little deeper into the possibility of physical extraterrestrials. Of course, everyone is familiar with the gray extraterrestrial, the gray alien, and it's speculated amongst many now that these are just, like you said, containers for something else or some sort of biological technology that's used to interact with us because maybe these beings cannot. And that may be a little deeper layered than I'm even saying. It could go even further into some sort of hybridization with clone-like entities from what I've heard. What do you think about that?
I think it's so cool, and I think it's 100% accurate because we find that these interactions with the grays, it is a gray area. You know, some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them are in between. But more importantly, they look like us, which we find very intriguing, diabolical, intimidating. But even in, you know, the great theological literary works like the Bible, you know, it talks about the creator making something in his own image. And it would be like us sending Tesla robots to another star system. And the other entities in that star system engage with these Tesla robots, believing that these Tesla robots are us, which they're not us, but they're very much created in our own image. So they're getting a good depiction of what we are, but it's not us. So I think you're dead on with that.
Now, you mentioned the Bible. This brings us to prophecy and through the Christian or biblical lens, what could be unfolding? I grew up in a Catholic Christian home, and I just talked about this yesterday with Charlie Robinson, and I believe I've told this story before, but briefly I'm just going to tell you about my experience growing up in junior high school. I might have even told you this before. They showed a video, a very low-budget video of what the apocalypse would be like. It started out with pandemics and being microchipped by this evil global elite. And then they said this charismatic leader would come to power, be in control basically of all the world governments. But at the same time this was happening, we'd also start seeing UFOs all over. But there would be a deception of some sort behind it. And things, of course, escalated into demons taking over the earth and things like that. But I found it so interesting, the series of events that was portrayed. And this was back in the early 90s, late 80s when this video was out there. I wish I could find it again. But there's many people that believe we're in a prophetic age just because of the high strange aspects that our reality contains right now. Do you think that there is a biblical or at the least spiritual aspect to the non-human aspect of all this?
Yeah, and I love that. I love it when people disregard theological text, whether that is any of them, the Quran, the Bible, whatever, the Talmud. Oh, we're gonna take stuff in, but we're gonna ignore that. It's like, no, 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 no. Take all the pieces of the puzzle you can possibly get your hands on because you will get a better depiction. And I was discussing this very topic with someone recently, in that historically, humankind, sadly, with wars and violence, history has moved on, the wheels of history have moved on blood alone. And if you disagree, you take them out, you take their stuff, and it is what it is. And, traditionally, with the Romans, for example, they would go out and, they would take lands that had what they wanted. They would decimate the population, take some of them as slaves. But you could see it for what it was, and they wouldn't lie about it. They're like, we're going to take that, we're going to bring it back, and we're going to get rid of our competition. And it was very, even though horrific, it was very honest and forthright and dumbed down for the populace. As time has progressed, I've noticed, and I'm sure you have, that things have become very deeply sophisticated with misinformation. And although we very much still do the exact same thing, we hide it under layers and layers and layers of deception. And a really good example of that is the situation we're in now. Why would we have any enemies? Well, it's my understanding, and I get this from somebody who knows a lot more than myself economically, that if it were not for the conflict in Ukraine, that this country, the United States of America, would be in a deep, deep recession or depression where we would all probably be broke.
Interesting.
Grappling for scraps and completely on the decline. However, in the words, not my own words, in the words of Mitch McConnell, when asked, why are we giving these billions and billions of dollars to Ukraine? He said, we're not. We're getting this money back. We're getting this money back with interest. Not only are we, and RFK has said, it depicted this very well. Say what you will about RFK. He went way out on a limb explaining this. We have literally, the DuPont family is a really good example, and major multinational agricultural corporations based in the United States have taken control of some of the most rich agricultural land in Europe, aka Ukraine, because, they have to pay for this somehow. And we're literally taking their lands. We've decimated their population. Not we, right. But I'm talking about the multinationals, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, the ones that are invested in the Big Five, which is a military industrial complex, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics. These are so these corporations have gone in, made a killing, pun intended, and and filled our coffers. We've filled the bank vault, And now the same corporations, BlackRock is a really good example, has started getting billions of dollars ready to rebuild and the investment of the rebuilding of Ukraine. So we've made money going in and decimating everything, taking control of it, and then rebuilding it. And every step of the way, this is money coming into our country, leaving other countries. But when you look at the layers of deception, it's not like we just said, we're going to go do this. No, it's like, oh no, we need to help. We're the world police. We need to help. It's always this help, it's very interesting how it all works, very politically motivated. But in essence, we saved our butts. I'm not saying we, because I'm in no position to make these decisions, but on one hand, am I happy that I'm not on the street grappling for scraps for myself and my family? Yes. But am I happy seeing what I'm seeing? No, I don't like that. I think there's got to be a happy medium.
Right. Now, going back to the prophetic aspects for a minute, there is this very powerful consensus amongst many people who are psychic, intuitive, claim to have a connection with higher intelligences, that we are on the cusp of entering a golden age, that there are events unfolding that is going to completely awaken humanity, and that what we're experiencing now is a precursor to that we might experience a great deal of turmoil, but after the dust settles, we will be in a much better place than we are now. I'd love to get your thoughts on that possibility.
I believe that. I think that, to put it into context, we have a lot more people that can see through the bullshit than historically. And I think that if there was, let's say a Star of Bethlehem nowadays, there wouldn't be 3 wise men on camels. There'd be like 300.
Right.
I think that, there's a lot of people have their eyes open and can see right through the BS. And I think that's a good thing. That is how a better future is going to happen. And it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing, and it's not just intelligence based. It's really kind of integral, like something bigger than that. Like people are just more connected to one another in ways that historically would be considered, like these are all wise men or sages, but yeah, we just don't. We don't recognize it for what it is nowadays. We call it other things like, oh, that guy's really got it together, and stuff like that. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah, my friend Frank, the shaman, he says that the first time JC came around, he was one man, and it was obviously not enough to spread the message. He believes this time millions of JCs are coming back to spread the message, and that's going to be how we essentially win the game, right?
Yeah, that's a great example, and it's wild that it's come to that, but we see so much this day and age. Like we should not be able to see through some of the things we're seeing, like the fact that we're even having this conversation about drones that the government won't talk about. Yeah. All they're telling us is don't shoot at them. There's nothing to worry about, but if they fall, don't approach them. Well, that's like those two things don't make any sense.
Yeah.
Right? That is like very strange. That's like something you'd hear a parent tell a toddler without telling them everything in between. So I don't know. I think that obviously our higher level, not all government, but I think our higher level intelligence agencies know exactly what this is.
When it comes to what you've been doing around your ranch, has there been anything interesting unfolding? Any sightings, phenomena, series of events, experiments that you've been excited about lately?
Yeah, it's been I love it when it's colder. Had a very interesting conversation with an individual, a local, who had a shapeshifter sighting on his way to work. On the way out to the oil field, he saw, for lack of a better word, what people would call, skinwalkers. And it's such an interesting area. There's so many interesting aspects to it, but I think it's just kind of like really what we're talking about. It's a global thing, but there's certain areas, whatever those are, the San Luis Valley in Colorado, Sedona, the Four Corners area, of course, the Uinta Basin of Utah. You have these areas where there's sort of a magnifying glass effect where it multiplies, it kind of 10x's the experience, and you see them a little bit more often. But I think this stuff can be and is seen just about everywhere. But yeah.
Right on. This is a super interesting time. Thank you so much for coming on, especially late notice. There's much more we're going to have to discuss as everything unfolds, so we're going to keep on coming back and trying to keep everybody updated, at least with our insights, and that's what we have to offer. So, Ryan, thank you again. Before we go, just remind everyone where they can find you.
You bet. And appreciate you, Chris, and all you do. You're a very important aspect to all this. Yeah, you can find me at heroparanormal.com or Hero Paranormal on YouTube, Spotify, Rumble, anywhere.
Awesome. Ryan, thank you again. We'll definitely do it again soon. And until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We will talk again tomorrow, and happy solstice. Hello, friends. Have you tried what may be the most powerful antioxidant known to man, C60 PurplePower? My C60 story has led me to great health mentally and physically. It's helped me personally lose weight, have more energy, and fight aging in general. You can also get C60 for your pets. Our dogs love it. They may live forever. Go check out C60 for yourself. If you use the link right in the description, you're going to get 10% off your order plus free shipping. They have some incredible new products like gummies, oils, and much more. We live in an incredible age of information. More and more, we're discovering that we've been lied to and misled about much of our human history. Cory Hughes is providing profound revelations about World War I, World War II, the JFK assassination, Martin Luther King's assassination, and much, much more on his new Substack, Bloody History. Subscribe now for as little as $5 monthly. Just click that link right in the description to get started now and learn about our true history. Hello, friends. Are you struggling to lose weight and keep it off? Have you tried intermittent fasting, low-carb or ketogenic diets, cutting calories, and exercising more with no success? Book a free intro call with my friend Christian Yordanov to see how he can help you. He is a health author and functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. He was on the show recently to discuss his latest book on longevity, How to Actually Live Longer, Volume 1. He understands that for many people, excess weight gain and weight loss resistance is much more complex than calories in, calories out. You may be having a hard time shedding the pounds because of hormonal and metabolic imbalances that won't respond to simply eating less and moving more. In our modern environment full of obesogenic chemicals and endocrine disruptors, xenoestrogens, and persistent organic pollutants, as well as unprecedented levels of stress, a more sophisticated approach is needed to help people like yourself achieve long-lasting results. Christian's going to help you lose weight in a safe, sustainable, and stress-free manner. He doesn't use severe calorie restriction, low-carb or ketogenic diets, intermittent or water fasting, or intense exercise regimens with his clients. Instead, his focus is on improving diet quality, addressing hormonal and metabolic imbalances, reducing stress, and helping you build the habits and lifestyle that will allow you to achieve your body composition goals and transform your health. In addition, he's going to help you boost your detoxification system because this is critical to get right before you start losing a significant amount of weight. Christian will help you get healthy to lose weight. That is the right way to do it. This is not a quick fix, but a comprehensive strategy that'll help you achieve your desired body composition in a safe, free, and stress-free manner. If you are done with the fat diets and intermittent starvation and are ready for real solutions, the support you need is available. Click that link in the description to learn more and book your free call with Christian to see how he can help you. Make sure you mention FKN when booking, and he will add extra free consultation sessions to your package.